Welcome to our Go Moment today, Living the Mission. Very pleased to have with us Jim and Jen Snider from Cast Your Care Ministries in Kensington. You guys have been in Kensington 22 years.
Yes.
That is such a long time in ministry.
Decades.
Tell us a little bit about what your ministry does. For all our viewers out there, many of our people from our church we've been coming to your ministry for a long time. But for those that don't know about Cast Your Care, give us a little overview of what you do in Kensington.
Well, we live there.
Yeah.
I always say that because I just see that in Scripture so much where God calls you to a place.
Yeah.
And then when you get to that place, He shows you what you're going to do.
So you don't travel from the burbs into Kensington.
We live there. Yeah, we live right over the mission.
You live in the heart of Kensington
Yeah.
yourselves as a family.
Yeah.
Raise your kids there.
Yeah.
Tell us about your ministry there.
Yeah. So we do basically whatever anybody needs, but we focus on a food cupboard that we have. We have people in the neighborhood. A lot of this stuff we've done because people have asked for help. My idea would have probably been a computer lab and something, like that. So none of this is my ideas. This is all started from people in the community asking for help. And so our food cupboard's a big thing now. Phil Abundance supports us a lot through that, and we get food drives and things like that so we can help feed the community. Mm-hmm. We also do a big meal on Saturday. That's a great opportunity for feeding the poor, but also for us as the church to get involved and feed the poor. So it's it tears down a lot of barriers. You wouldn't think that, but the poor are afraid of a lot of people from the suburbs, and the suburbs are afraid of a lot of the poor and the homeless in the city. So, but it's not, once they just spend an afternoon together and all the barriers go away, and they're just like, I got so much more out of it. I thought I was coming here to help them, but I needed this, and it's and I'm like, because that is, as believers, that's what we're still here for.
I really think when you have a ministry that really is helping the needy, the poor, sometimes even undervalued only because of fear, I think in some cases is just the misnomer of poverty at times.
And that's a big part of our mission. It's not just to the poor, it's to the people in church that have some resources, have a heart, have a compassion, but they're afraid. And we've just seen there's missionaries all over the world that have been sitting in the pews and have come down and served a meal on Saturday, and it just had their whole life changed. Yeah. Their world has been rocked,
Yeah, because I do think at the end of the day, you always have to remember, I think this is a thing that's easy to forget in a ministry like yours, is that this is just people to people. Mm-hmm. It's not income level to income level, and I think sometimes we kind of view those types of ministries in kind of that way, and it's humiliating for the people who are feeling impoverished because they're having a hard time, and we feel this compassion, and yet we see ourselves outside of that circle, and really it's just people to people. And so we have to be mindful of that.
They don't know what to do with that compassion they feel, so we give them an opportunity to do something.
And just relate to people as
just like
people.
Me and you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So one thing I love for our viewers to learn that I want you to know about their story, it's really interesting because they are original Florida people. You didn't have family up here. You didn't have really any connections up here. So how did God speak to you about moving to the heart of Philadelphia in Kensington? How did that come about, Jim? Jen, that's a great story.
It's huge.
But it's worth
it's great.
People.
It's I just recently heard somebody say that you'll be like struggling with something or praying for something or seeking something, and then all of a sudden it just seems like boom, 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 and it just happens so fast, And that's kind of the way it was. I was youth pastor at a church in Wellington, Florida, and took my youth group on a missions trip to Mexico. And they were going to camp and stuff like that. And I says, we're not going to do that anymore. I kind of got tired of playing games. And I said, let's go on a missions trip. And there was a lot of opposition, just because you're going to a third world country. It's scary, to send your kids there. Scary. I was,
your first trip too, responsible for all these kids.
All these
Absolutely.
kids, and I was equally afraid and went and did that and just saw my life but really the kids' lives just changed. In a way that Bible study didn't do it, a concert didn't do it, a camp didn't do it. Like something, you might take them away to an event, and for a couple days they'd be a little different, but you know how kids and teenagers are, it's like kind of the back of the same.
Yeah.
But these kids were really changed. I had parents coming up to me 2-3 months later going, my kid's different.
Wow.
It changed them. I had employers saying, anytime you want to take any of the kids,
please
you can
take my
them.
child.
Yes. It's like they're just a different person,
Yeah.
And I think that's so much of it is we spend so much time studying the Word and getting taught and getting taught and getting trained. We really need to get out there. We need to get off the practice field and get out there.
Experience compassion.
Yeah, and do it.
Right? Because compassion is a living thing.
It is. It's living. And you pray for people that don't have any other resources. Like either God's going to heal them or they're going to be sick.
Yeah.
There's no plan B. And God shows up in those situations big time.
Amen to that.
And people are like, well, why doesn't he do that in America? We have a lot of resources. We can go to the doctor. We can get medicines. We can get prescriptions. We can refinance. We can put things on credit cards. We have a lot of, when you go to some of these, we have a lot of opportunities to help ourselves. When you go to a place where people don't have that opportunity, you really see God show up. And so I saw that. And so that was kind of a point where I'm just like, I want to do this full time, Lord. I'm willing to be a missionary full time. And I guess growing up, I grew up in the church. Jennifer didn't, but I just
felt. Did you
grow
up in the church, Jen?
Young Life Ministry, 16 years old, met Jesus, met Jim the next year. So.
All right. So you met at church?
Well, no. That's another story.
Another story.
Day,
okay.
Her mom set us up, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, is it set up?
But it was God. God was in the whole thing.
I'm sure.
But so it was just. I just thought as soon as I said I'm ready to be a missionary, like I'm just going to be snatched up and thrown into Africa somewhere in a grass hut and dirt floors, That was it, because I'm just like, God's just needing missionaries. As soon as you say yes, he's going to snatch you up. Well, he didn't, and a year went by, and I'm talking to people, and at some point you said it's like living with a pregnant woman.
Yeah, it was like I knew something was just growing, and it was going to be birthed at some time, but it was really a challenge to figure out.
It was a process. It wasn't an instant.
It wasn't an instant. Like 2 years go by, and 3 years go by, and 4 years go by, and 5 years go by, and 6 years go by, And I'm sheep and goats passage, was impacting my life, and I'm reading stuff, and I'm broken. I'm like, Lord, I'm a goat, and I can't fix it. And I don't know what to do, and I'm just broken because I read that passage, and I really see that needs to be like the relationship with God needs to be this father relationship. Like, Daddy, I can't do it. I see where you're telling me that I'm a goat, and I acknowledge it, but you're gonna have to fix it because I tried to do a little. Like, I was living in West Palm Beach. We started going to an inner city church, and they would have outreaches on Saturday, and I wasn't going to them. Because I had to cut the grass. I had stuff to do. There was I was
you're
busy.
a working man.
I was
taking
busy.
care of your family.
I was busy, So it's like, when people come down, I'm always like, this is amazing, that you made it down, because I didn't make it down, So
you're appreciative, because you know what it costs.
I know what it costs. It's part of the story. So I was going to Mexico doing I go for a month, and she said I'd get my fix, and so eventually that dried up. I wasn't able to do that. The Lord shut the door on that, you know, kind of clearly. The airfare just quadrupled, and and so I wasn't able to go anymore. And so then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. We'll live in the suburbs. We'll do our life. We'll work our jobs, and we were not going to be missionaries. It's off the table.
Wow, you just kind of I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to do about it.
I'm done. I'm done figuring.
I'm done figuring, and I have my list because I'm trained in accounting, so I have my to-do list that needs to happen. So we can be missionaries. Here's what needs to happen, and nothing. It was getting worse, not better. The list. Yeah, so then, and when I gave up, it was probably a couple months after that. In the summer, I got a call from the organization that I was helping, Ventures and Missions, and they called and said, we had a cancellation in Philly for a project leader. Would you come lead a project there? And I said, well, I'll see if I can get tickets, And they were cheap. So a couple $100, and this was back, I don't know, in the 80s or whatever, so that was a good deal for 90s. Good deal. And so I said, all right, well, I'll go, and I went, and it was in Kensington.
How about
at
that?
the place we're living in right now. And
it was the place.
The place, yeah.
So you've been at that place the whole time.
Yeah. 89, I think, was the first summer there.
99, darling.
What?
You're
Wasn't it 89 that we were there? Or 99?
89, I was graduating high school,
Oh.
getting married to you, so.
That was a good year.
99. 99.
It was a good year. It was 99, and it was a very good
Here
year.
to fact check all of these.
Hey, listen,
details.
it does seem like a long time.
Oh, it is.
doesn't it?
We
Yeah.
always say we need to make notes because we're getting
I know.
older and
I'm the
forgetting
same
stuff.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went and led the missions trip, and it was amazing. I mean, I was just really blown away because I've been in Mexico so much, and the community. You always need a translator,
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this person wants to talk to me. Let me find a translator, and even praying for people, you had to kind of find a translator, So, I mean, just people talking. We did Vacation Bible School on one city block, and we had over 50 kids, and they all lived on that block.
Wow.
Like we would do them in Mexico, and we might have a dozen kids in the whole colonia.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and I didn't believe the lady when she told me. I'm like, and I was going around asking the kids, well, where do you live? And they kept pointing to their doors, and every kid pointed to a door on that street.
Just right
I'm
there.
like, where do you live? Where do you live? Right there, right there, right there. Yeah, 50 kids on one block. So it was overwhelming, like the ministry opportunities, In Mexico, we'd have these teams of like 50 to 100 kids. Ministering to 12, kids at VBS,
Yeah.
And then here we were in Philly with like 12 kids ministering to 50 kids, and then that was just one block,
Yeah.
And it was just an atmosphere of love and appreciation. Sometimes you go minister someplace and you see the verse where it says, kick the dust off your sandals and move on to the next town.
Right, because you're not received there.
Yeah, there are places, that, and I've been in Miami and done some work there, and I didn't have a peace there.
Yeah,
I felt like I needed to kick the dust off my
Well,
sandals
I
and move
always
on.
marveled in the scriptures where it talked about Jesus, where God said, "Don't go there."
Yeah.
Like God had a lot of direction
He did.
for Jesus about where to go and when to go.
And if you're not
and
received,
that's important. It really is important
move
to
on. Move
recognize what's happening.
It was. So I just, awesome place, awesome ministry, well received, just tons of need, at the time. It was really, a hard place, actually worse than Mexico. I mean,
right.
just with the drugs and
A little darker.
and the violence and stuff, and the city is a very hard place with the brick
Yeah.
and the asphalt and the pavement. I mean,
Yeah.
you never get to see trees or any kind of
Yeah.
nature type stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a hard, and a lot of the kids and people that have never left the neighborhood.
It's a small world.
It is. They don't leave,
Philadelphia is
Yeah.
a huge
Yeah,
city,
yeah.
and Kensington is its own little world,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
And some of the kids have never been downtown, much less.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They were taking some kids to camp, and they drove downtown to head out to Lancaster to the camp, and the kids were like, "Oh, look at the big buildings! Look at the
Isn't
big."
that something?
Yeah. So they don't leave. They don't leave.
They don't leave their community.
And it is one of the refreshing things that we have to do just to keep our sanity to be there.
Yeah.
22 years is
Yeah.
we get out. We get out of the
Yeah.
city. We take breaks. We go
Yeah.
to Florida and visit our family and friends. And,
That's great.
And even just a day out in Lancaster or something, just the nature just really does something for your soul.
Yeah, it does.
And you don't realize that.
Yeah, you got to keep yourself refreshed in
You
ministry,
do.
especially that kind of ministry.
yeah.
Because
And a lot of the people
it's
can't do
really
that.
a putting out.
Yeah.
Well,
you
I
gotta-
mean, that's the purpose
you
of
gotta
it.
be filled back up,
Yeah,
yeah.
you got to keep yourself full.
Yeah.
Real quick, what was it like raising kids then in that environment? Because that inner city, poverty. There's a mentality a lot of times in those communities that's very different from what you were raised with. And so how did your kids
Yeah.
assimilate all that?
Well, and it's challenging because I did what I knew and what I was capable of doing.
Yeah.
I homeschooled all three of them.
Okay.
All the way through except Abby's senior year. So it was
Yeah.
interesting being this family where we had, and oftentimes the best of both worlds. We had these people who were coming to serve with these amazing hearts that wanted to come serve, and our neighbors and our guests who we feel are just the greatest people. So it was a great atmosphere. The challenges were, they didn't really know who they were because they knew they weren't inner city kids.
Yes.
And they knew they weren't suburban kids coming
Yeah.
in and out.
Yeah.
They all have a passion for our population and the marginalized. But I think we'll see kind of more, they're all adults now, but it's interesting how they all have perspectives and processing. Our 30-year-old, he moved into the neighborhood as an adult, and people would say, "Oh, how long have you been here?" And he's like, "Well, since I was 8." And they're like, "No, like in Kensington, like
8.
gentrifying." He's
Yeah.
like, "No, I grew up here." And so
So it's home to him.
it's home to him. It's home to all
All
of
of our
them.
kids.
all of you, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is home now.
They really do.
This is your fit.
Yeah, but it was not, and it was challenging. I
I'll
wanted
bet.
to integrate more, but then I had the fears. I don't want to say like, oh, we just took the ground, but at the same time, we did.
Normal, healthy
Yeah,
concerns for
Yeah,
your
yeah,
children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we we were able to. One of the fun stories was when we had first moved there and we were on the street. We didn't have our side yard accessible, but our neighbor was Eddie looking for a place to start the AA and a clubhouse. We were piling out, and he was like, "Where do you guys live?" And Jim's like, "Oh, we're right here." And he's like, "No." Like,
he didn't believe you.
You're a little family?
And we just, if we were brave enough to move there, for him to be brave enough to move there and start what he was doing, we thought that was enough. But, the Lord has been so faithful.
That's what he said. He said, if you can live here, I guess I should start this recovery house.
It has been for us as much as it has been for anything we've done for anyone else.
Yeah.
The Lord has I said to my girlfriends, if I am like here, if God can actually make me joyful here, we'll know he's real.
Yeah.
I resisted calling it home for a long time.
Did you? It was a hard place to feel home. Gotcha.
And now it is home, and it has been a blessing ground for us, but I don't want to negate the wow, that was a lot of transition, and it did feel like a foreign country in a lot of ways.
I'm sure. Listen, driving sometimes through Philadelphia is you just feel like you stepped into somewhere else.
But if God is calling you, he is with you.
Amen.
And our presence is what he would love for our neighbors to experience, and it's the idea of when I would serve communion, I'm holding the bread and people would take a piece of bread, and it's like I'm serving. It's not necessarily me busy with all, it's just I'm bringing Jesus. And that's really, he'll do the rest. Just be a
where do you see, are you still just staying steady on course? Do you see, what are you seeing coming up moving forward now for Cast Your Care? We're past the pandemic. Things are getting back to normal a little bit for you guys, because I know we have a serve group that goes to Kensington the second Saturday of every month. If you are interested in getting board with that, reach out to us at clc@clconline.org. We'll make a connection for you to Sarah Neal, who's overseeing that group. We would love for you to go down to Kensington to serve. I did it. It's a great experience. A lot of our life groups have gone down there. They were just sharing with me about a group of men from our church who were there every Saturday doing construction, helping them really create a great space to serve those meals. You serve 200 or 300 people on a Saturday, is that correct? And you have a lot of other ministries involved on those Saturdays helping you do that. Is that right?
Yeah, different churches will take a Saturday on and put the food together and get a team together and come down and serve.
And you have a food pantry.
Yep.
Are you taking donations for your food pantry always, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
We always take donations for food and stuff. So.
All right.
I mean, we're pretty good right now. But
and they can reach
knows,
out to you on your website, right? CastYourCare.com or .org, which
all
is
of
it?
them.
All of them.
Any which way, you'll find us.
.com, .org, .net.
Yeah. If you were to give someone, let's say, because I know even in our church, we have a lot of people that really feel very compassionate, that really love to go out and serve. But let's say God is speaking to someone like you guys. What lesson, what thing would you say to them as you've journeyed through this last, 22 years or so, that you felt you really is a takeaway that would help someone else who had a passion to live the mission like you? What would you say to them today?
Yeah, well, so I guess we're circling back around to the story a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So I came to Philly and, did a missions trip here, just like anybody else would do, a short-term thing, and thought it was great. I came back, and the Adventures of Missions director guy says, we're having problems staffing it. They had college kids kind of living there and stuff. He's like, we can't leave the building vacant because homeless people move in and crack house will happen, So he's like, so we need somebody there. He says, well, I know you wanted to go to Mexico, but what about going to Philly? And I said, no. So he said, well, would you pray about it? I says, no.
You did. You told him straight out. Nope, not for me.
Straight out. I says, I just can't live there with my family.
Yeah.
I mean, there was
concern about that.
Yeah, there was, drug deals going on right in front of the building, prostitution's happening, acts happening in the car, needles, you'd have to step over somebody with a needle coming in and out the front door. It was, you talk about not letting your kids watch certain rated movies, Yeah,
you're living it on the streets.
You can't look out the window. How can I put my kids in a place like that?
Yeah.
And the place was, rough, to say the least. It was kind of a college flop house kind of a feel that was a crack house before that, kind of a vibe. So it just was, not going to happen,
Yeah.
So, and he said, all right. And I said, it's a great ministry. It's just awesome.
Love
you
what you're
can't
doing.
shut it down. You've got to keep it going. I said, it's better than Mexico. I said, the ministry and the stuff that's happening, the lives that are being changed. He says, you've got to keep it going. He says, okay. So another month goes by, I get another call. They had another project leader get sick and back out coincidentally.
Okay.
And he's like, well, this time I want you to go, but I want you to take Jennifer. And I'm like, I know what you're trying to do, and that's not going to help. I says, I love the ministry. I'm passionate for it. I said, if I was a single man, I'd be there in a minute. I says, but bringing my wife is just, that's not going to help. He says, I don't care. I want her to go. And so I did. And she didn't talk to me, I don't think, the first 2 or 3 days there. Of course,
No.
I was leading
You
I was
felt
leading
overwhelmed.
Like there's no way.
I was leading a team,
Yeah.
And she was seeing me
The need.
doing the mission and doing the work,
awesome.
and I was excited, and I was
And
going
so you
for it.
you saw the call
I
on
kind of
him?
knew where
You kind
this
of were
was
seeing
heading,
this
and
happening, huh?
this
Right
is
before
great.
your eyes.
But I was agreeing with her. I'm like, I
Yeah,
agree. We can't
right.
live here.
Yeah.
I agree. This place is awesome. It's amazing. But I agree. We can't live here. And so we kind of went back to Florida and just kind of left it at that. Really, I felt like the Lord told me in a private, quiet time with Him, don't talk about this with your wife. He's like, I know your heart, but don't talk about this with your wife.
Let me handle her.
And that's what it was. But at the time, I'm kind of like,
You
well,
didn't know what that
I guess
meant.
we ain't moving then if I'm not talking about it. And we're definitely not, nothing's happening, And I, of course, being the accountant, I started seeing things on my list start to come off.
Yeah.
Seth, the director, said, if you're going to do this, I need you there by February next year. This was sometime in August. And I says, we're not going to do it. He says, all right. He says, I'm just giving you till February, because they're going to move out and we're going to either have to sell the building or do something, And I'm like, okay. So then anyway, I saw stuff coming off my list and getting concerned, I guess, because it's kind of like, all right, I'm not allowed to talk about it. Things are coming off the list. I mean, big things. Like we owed $10,000 in medical debt. And they didn't cash my checks for a couple months, and I got a hold of somebody and called them, and they says, oh, we didn't have your number, but your debt's been forgiven. The hospital changed hands, and there's no place to deposit your checks anymore, so your $10,000 debt's been
Wow.
forgiven.
So kind of supernatural things were happening.
yeah.
Lots of
Yeah.
supernatural.
Lots
I
of
asked the
supernatural
Lord
things.
for like 100, literally, confirmations, and I think He gave me 100 confirmations. It's like no big deal for Him to just keep letting me know
Yeah.
this isn't just His idea. This was one of my favorite confirmations. Was I was, Zach at the time was 8, and he was at the kitchen table doing his math. I'm like, this involves you too. What do you think about moving to Philadelphia and leaving grandparents and friends? And he put his pencil down and he says, well, Mom, you don't want to end up in the belly of a whale.
Wow. Out of the mouth of babes and
so, like,
sucklings, so as perfected
check
praise.
that little confirmation off,
Yeah,
right?
wow.
So we knew the Lord was in it, and that for me would be telling someone who's considering, or you feel the Lord is leading you, like,
Yeah.
just ask Him, talk to Him,
Yeah.
invite Him into all of those questions. And
Yeah.
I would just receive a cassette tape back in the day where a message would just answer
Yeah.
some of my heart's just concerns. And,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, we were more afraid not to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, she
Yeah.
described it as
I
like
bet. I bet.
free falling with
It
God,
was
you know.
just-
Yeah,
so,
free falling with
Incredible.
God.
Well,
Isn't that the truth?
And people
Yeah.
would say to us, because we weren't really raising support. We weren't really aggressive with this because everything was kind of, there wasn't a lot of time. There was like 4 months
Yeah.
for that to happen. And it was like, somebody said, aren't you afraid, I'm like, yeah, I'm scared to death, And they're like, aren't you afraid like one of your kids could be killed or something?
Yeah.
I says, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely, that's a real possibility. I said, but I'm more afraid right now not to go. So much
isn't-
stuff had happened
Yeah.
up to that point. I says, I'm scared to death to say no and not go.
That's really a great point. I do think a lot of times there is just a normal fear of the unknown, developing in our faith. I do know that nothing happens without a step of faith, though.
Yeah.
You just have to choose what faith you're going to have. Do you have the faith to stay put?
Yeah.
Or do you have the faith to go? And you didn't have the faith to stay
We
put.
didn't.
You had fear if you stayed put
We did.
more
Yeah.
than faith to go.
Because of what we saw
Yeah.
God doing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of living the mission. Fear is common to us all, but faith is the great equalizer and the overcomer. So it really doesn't always matter what's going on in the circumstances. You really have to live a life of faith and take those steps of faith and trust God. And great things happen. 22 years worth of powerful ministry happened because you were willing to take a step of faith and really overcome fear by taking the step of faith. So thank you so much for your ministry. We support these guys. Your support every month supports this ministry, and we would love to see you come down there and visiting them. Jim, Jen, I wish we had more time to talk, but I'm so glad. Thanks for taking the time and sharing our goal moment with us. We appreciate all of you. Get out there and live the mission.